My son, Jeremy, was almost 3 years old whenever his little sister was born. When it came time to bring Gina home from the hospital, I took my son, Jeremy, up to the hospital. We went up to the window looking into the nursery. And I asked him, I said, why don't you look out and look at all these babies? And why don't you pick out a baby for us to take home? And so he looked around, and I kind of guided him in the right direction. And finally, he chose the one that he wanted us to take home. And it was his little sister. So we took her home, and she had been there about 2 days. And she was doing a lot of crying. When she was hungry, she cried. When she needed changing, she cried. She just did what babies do. But I can still remember as Jeremy came to me, he was almost 3. He came to me, he said, Daddy, he said, can we take her back and get another one? And I had to tell him, I said, no. I said, when we give our word, then we're going to have to stick by our word. We can't take her back. She's ours for keep. Well, my name is Richard Coleman, and I'm the pastor at Shepherd Church of the Nazarene in Lexington, South Carolina. And it's great to be able to spend just a few moments with you today. We're at the place in Joshua's life where he's an old man. He's had a great life. They've conquered the land. The land has all been divided among the tribes. Everything is good. And Joshua tells the people, he said, listen closely to what I have to say. He said, if you do what God has told you to do, if you live the way that God has told you to live, you will be blessed. Nobody will be able to come against you. Everything will be great because God will protect you if you'll do that. And then Joshua continued. He said, but if you start getting involved in things that you ought not be involved in, if you start worshiping the gods with the little g, the gods of these people from these other lands and getting involved in these other things, if you do that, there will be terrible consequences that you will pay. A little bit of time passed, and Joshua recognized that some of the people were starting to kind of venture away from the direction that God wanted them to go in. And so Joshua held like a town meeting, I guess you would call it. And he got together with them and he said, you need to understand something. He said, you need to decide today, not tomorrow, not the next day. He said, you need to decide today whether or not you're going to serve God. And Joshua at that time took a moment and he said, let me tell you what God we're talking about. The God with the big G. The God that, and he went through the whole history up until that time, how God directed them and guided them and all the miracles that God performed to get them to where they were. He said, this is the God that I'm talking about. He said, you need to make up your mind. Are you going to serve this God, or are you going to go off in another direction and worship other gods with little g, or other things, or even yourself? He said it's got to be God, or it's got to be self, but it can't be both. And so Joshua said, determine this day, decide this day whom you will serve. And then Joshua drew a line in the sand, so to speak. And he said, this day, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. You know, things haven't changed very much. We start looking at how God has blessed and all the things that God has done in our lives and the miracles that we have seen. I could just go on and on and on about all the things that I've seen God do in my life. Some people would not consider them miracles. Some would consider them just a coincidence. But I'm telling you, I've had too many coincidences for me not to realize that they're miracles. God still works today. And His goal is that each and every one of us would come to a saving knowledge of who He is. He wants us all to get to heaven. But to get there, we have to be forgiven of our sins. And then we have to live our life the way that He wants us to live it. And it's not a bad way. I mean, God just gives us some pretty simple instructions. You know, He's saying, don't go around murdering people. Don't commit adultery. Don't lie to people. Don't steal from people. I mean, He gave us some real basic things that we need to live by. And every one of the commandments is either about loving God or about loving others. It's not that hard. So we start with forgiveness, and then to live a life the way God would want us to live. We actually have to have that drawing a line in the sand moment in our life. Joshua approached these people and he drew the line in the sand. And he told them, whatever you choose to do, you go ahead and make that decision now. But as far as me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord. Only way we get to heaven is by that line drawn in the sand. We're going to have to come to God and we're going to have to say, God, I want to be forgiven of my sin. I want to turn my life over to you. I want to live for you every day. And then we actually start doing that one step at a time. Choose this day whom you will serve. Well, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May His face shine upon you. May you truly be able to experience the forgiving grace of God and the wonderful opportunity to be able to live for God every day in His will. Thanks for taking the time and viewing today.